Anyways, welcome back to day 3 of the dopamine detox I'm doing. And we're going to talk about some of the realizations I had yesterday. One of them is I had this analogy for what it's like to focus on the present moment and how everything kind of unblurs. And I'm like, oh, I had this great image I'm going to put up right here that I had ChatGPT make. Whoops, I'm trying to sit on a skateboard. I had a great image I had ChatGPT make, but I was looking for an easier way to explain what it's like. And you might notice this when you're driving and you're going in the car and you know there's a sky above you, you know there's grass to the side or a guardrail to the side and other cars on the road, but you don't really know what they look like. You're not paying attention to the details because you're focused on driving. And then it came to me and I had a realization of when you focus on the present moment and you bring yourself into the present moment, things in the present moment come into focus. And what that means is when you can get out of your head, when you're no longer focused on the thoughts in your head, when you're no longer focused on distractions or your phone or any of these other things, then you can more easily notice the details in your present moment. You can more easily notice how the light goes through the leaves or the sounds of water or birds chirping. You can notice the reflection in the water when you look at it instead of just seeing the water itself. And a lot of things in the present moment, you don't realize how little you actually pick up until you start focusing on becoming present. Food now has this whole other level of taste to it, and I'm more aware of the taste and the texture of it. And I'm also, I think I dropped maybe a pound or two, but I'm just eating less because I'm not even consciously doing it. I'm consciously making sure I am aware of my food, eating slower so I can enjoy my food. But when I'm aware of what I'm eating, when I'm aware of making sure I'm hungry before I go eat, and when I'm aware of the taste, and I don't just consume, I'm eating less food, but enjoying it more. It's this weird kind of paradox of people being told, well, you have to hate your food, you have to not enjoy being on a diet. Well, I would tell people, go on the diet of conscious eating. Taste your food, feel the texture of it, notice the hot and the cold, the crispy, the sweet, the savory. Notice all these little details about the food you're eating, and notice when you're full. Don't eat while we're working. Be deliberate about when you eat, and you will lose weight. It's the non-diet for people who enjoy eating, of just actually stop distracting yourself while you're eating, while you're doing other things, and sit back from your computer if you're eating at your desk. Actually enjoy the food, and you'll wind up eating less of it. I think it's because you don't go into the derp state. You don't go into the state of unconscious eating where all of a sudden the whole bag of chips is gone. Because you're making yourself eat the chips one at a time, and you're paying attention to how each one tastes, the texture of it, the saltiness, the crunch of it. This is something I really enjoy. A big new thing for me is because I would just eat my food so quickly. I wouldn't really chew it that much. I would just the littlest amount of chewing that was required to actually be able to not choke on it was basically what I would do. And I would just wolf things down and be yeah, diet is just about getting calories in. And there's so much more to food than that, and I'm glad that I'm starting to experience it. Another one of the realizations I had yesterday was I have this tendency to have theoretical conversations in my head with people, and I try to predict outcomes, and if they say this, then I'll say that. And I was wondering if having these conversations makes me less mindful, because I'm up in my head and not in the present moment. And if when I focus on being present, I can then create the space and create the awareness when I actually have the interaction to have these thoughts. Because the more you meditate, the more aware you are, the longer there is between the impulse to say something, the impulse to do something, and when you actually do it. So you have time to think about whether that is the correct response for the situation or not. And I was wondering if practicing mindfulness would just solve this issue and make it so I wouldn't have to actually have these conversations in my head, because a lot of them are more so situated around worries I have. Like, what if this person does this? Or what if he says this? Or if he calls me out on being late? Then I'll say, like, well, I have a bunch of things that I'm trying to get done. I'm sorry about that. And I'm going to try to do better. And I just, like, I plan out these conversations in my head. And it kind of goes back all the way to elementary school, when I would just act out and I'd get sent to the principal's office. And it wasn't really even anything bad. It was like, for all of 6th grade, I spent every single morning in the winter in the principal's office because I refused to wear jeans, and I would wear khaki shorts to school because the rooms were at 75 degrees around there. That's Fahrenheit for anyone watching international. But I would get so hot and just this overheated. And I have this, when I get too hot, I have this feeling of like tiny bugs biting me all over my skin. It's the most uncomfortable thing in the world. But they didn't see it that way. They're like, oh, well, it's too cold out for you to, like, it's too cold out. You need to wear jeans. And I'm like, I'm not going outside though. They're like, but it's too cold at the bus stop. You have to wear jeans. I'm like, no. And my mom was like, that's stupid. So basically I had to spend every single morning for 60 days or something in the principal's office. And I would show up to school. I'd walk up the 4 flights of stairs to the 4th floor where my classes were being taught and my homeroom was. I would sit down, and then my teacher would tell me, Jason, go to the principal's office. You're not wearing jeans. Then I would go down 3 flights of stairs to the 1st floor and then sit in the principal's office for an hour. And then the principal, I think, would just say, don't do this again, wear jeans tomorrow, and I go back upstairs. 60 days I went like that, just completely useless. I missed, I think, all art classes for that year. I think that was the semester, trimester, quarter, whatever we were doing, that we had art. So I just missed it. But with that being said, in the principal's office, I would think of all of the things the principal was going to say and then what I would say. And there are some situations where I was at fault or I wasn't doing the best thing. Like this one time I put whiteout on the back of a Dorito and I gave it to my friend on April Fool's Day and he was about to eat it. I was like, no, man, like I thought you were going to notice it, but I told him that there was whiteout on the back of it. And he thought it was the funniest thing in the world. He thought it was so funny. He turns to my other friend, he gives them the chip, and he doesn't tell them that there was whiteout on the back of it. And guess what? Because I was the one that put whiteout on the back of the chip, I wound up getting a letter home and sent to the principal's office for, I believe as they put it, attempted poisoning of a classmate. Yeah, wasn't even me. But during that time, you're kind of freaking out, and I always found it useful, or just way to distract myself is if I could go over everything I thought he was going to say and then plan my response to try to get the outcome I wanted. And I would just do this, and I guess I still have the habit of doing that today. And I thought this was a brilliant idea. I'm like, I'm going to become more mindful, and then I'm not going to need to plan out my stuff anymore. And I give it one thing I love doing is I have insights, I have thoughts that come to me, and I give them to ChatGPT and I ask it, what is the counter perspective here? Sometimes I can come up with the counter perspective on my own, but other times I might have trouble with it. And I'll give you another example after this, but ask it, what is the counter perspective for uh, being present and not thinking through all the conversations? And it's talks about, I brought up some great points. It's like mental rehearsal and problem solving. It is true that some level of preparation and mental rehearsal can be beneficial, especially for complex or high stakes situations. However, the key is balance. It's always that freaking balance, man. Like, I'll have other insights of like, life's not all about work, and I'll give them to ChatGPT. It's like I kind of swing way too far in one direction, and then I realize, you know what? It's not that healthy to swing all the way into this direction. So I have some insight, and I give it to ChatGPT, and it's like, well, you know what? It's also not healthy to swing all the way in the opposite direction. The key is balance. And I'm like, you keep telling me the key is balance. Like, that's the one thing I'm really bad at right now. Like, I'm really bad at balance, like allowing myself to do something a little bit, but not too much. I mean, the whole thing of this 30-day detox is like, I'm detoxing. I'm literally cutting it out, like just cutting it out. Like, I'm not balancing it. I'm not like giving myself a little bit of YouTube or a little bit of time to watch videos. I'm literally cutting it out to see what happens. And if I ask ChatGPT, what do you think about this? It's like, the key is balance. I'm like, yeah. Like, oh my God. I get it. I get that the key is balance, and I need to find where that balance is. And the point of the detox is kind of to swing so far in the other direction, because I'm over here with like phone addiction and wasting time on YouTube, 6-7 hour a day screen time on my phone, and I'm swinging all the way back to this direction so that I can break those habits. I can break the habits of listening to audiobooks all the time, and I become more conscious of what I'm doing. So I'm trying to swing all the way into this direction, break all those bad habits, and then I'll be able to hopefully find my way into the middle and answer the question of where the balance is, what is it. But I feel like I first need to break those habits in order to actually do it. It's kind of like, we're going to get a little off topic, but it's kind of like my caffeine addiction. I slowly ramped up, started off drinking like a monster, some 5-hour energy, and I'd have like maybe 20, 30 milligrams a day before wrestling practice because I felt faster. I felt a little bit more mentally there. Slowly started ramping up. School started happening, stressed out, finals, pulling all-nighters, 700 milligrams of caffeine a day. And I'm like, existence hurts. My brain hurts. I can't think. So you know what I do? I do a 30-day detox of all caffeine. I cut it out. And I have a great video about that. It talks about how I messed up my circadian rhythm so badly that I had to get put on SSRIs in order to actually sleep, because I was starting to hallucinate and not actually know if I was dreaming or what reality was. Because like, I would basically go to bed I'd sleep half an hour every 4 hours. Because initially when I first started off quitting, I was so tired of just sleeping the whole day. And I did that for about a week. But I was just sleeping so much that after that week, my circadian rhythm was messed up. And I'd be up and then I just crash because my energy, it wasn't used to, like, my body didn't know what, like, maintaining energy throughout the whole day was. So I would crash and I'd nap for like 30, 40 minutes. And then I'd wake back up and I'd go through my work. And this continued to the point of sleeping like 30 minutes every 4 hours. And I didn't know, like, my dreams were becoming so mundane, and my dream was like my everyday life. So I didn't know if I did something in my dream or if I did it in reality. And after like 2 weeks of this, I call my doctor up and I'm like, I need help. Like it was bad. Got put on SSRIs. It's not the best thing. They, like, again, not medical advice. Talk to your doctor. All disclaimers applied here, educational things, but it, like, reality felt weird. For at least a month to 2 months after I came off the SSRIs, and I could tell that was the SSRIs doing this, but reality felt weird. I'm very grateful to them for being able to help kickstart me so I could actually sleep a full 8 hours, because that's one of the side effects they have. But reality felt weird when I was taking them, which is why I stopped way before my doctor even recommended me to stop. And I even was taking a lot smaller dosage than he gave me, but he gave me like a 14-day supply, and I took half of the dose he recommended for only like 8 days because things just started feeling weird. But with that being said, I then go without caffeine for like 2 or 3 years, and now I'm at this point where I'm not habitually consuming it, and I just do like a mug of green tea every morning, and I prepare that. Sometimes I even drink the green tea. I forget to make it, but when I'm at this level of being able to consume like 10, 15 milligrams, you really feel it. Like, I take this, and I would estimate half placebo, half actual benefits of green tea. But because I expect to feel more energized due to the fact I consume caffeine, I therefore feel more energized, but I also consume caffeine, so I do get a little bit of an energy boost from that. With that being said, hopefully I come to a similar situation with phone addiction and YouTube, podcasts, and Spotify, where not so much Spotify, but it's more so just Audible. I'll consume audiobooks, like literally replace what I've talked about my phone consumption being of I could watch 8, 9 episodes of a TV series a day. And I once made a list of all the TV shows I watched, and like I look at it, I'm like, how much of my life did I waste? And yeah, it's a lot, but that's why I'm making these changes now before I get any older, so I can stop down that path. And I've made so many changes, and I'm also documenting it because no one really does it. I mean, I'm not saying my goal is to become a spiritual guru, but like, if I can help other people along this path too, like, that's why I'm making these videos. But like, none of the gurus, Eckhart Tolle, I mean, to a small degree, I guess you can consider him one nowadays, Jay Shetty, or I think that's how you pronounce his name. The guy wrote the Rules for Love. He lived in a monastery for like a year or something, and then wrote a bunch of books about mindfulness. But I don't know if any of these guys have actually documented the process of becoming more aware, becoming conscious, and reaching higher states of being. So that's kind of the point of the YouTube channel, is to show people the process I went, because they kind of pop out of the woodwork, these spiritual gurus, these people that talk about enlightenment, like Dr. Joe. He just pops out and is like, I now have enlightenment. I now have all these things, and I know consciousness. And then they sell you courses and other things about how to achieve it. And I'm not saying I would never make a course about mindfulness and summarize all the work that I went into putting this, and I mean, or write a book about how to do it faster. But I also want something out there that's just free for everyone, where you can look at it and see the process I went through, see all the work that I put into becoming more mindful. So with that being said, the other thing I want to talk about is, another thing I was talking to ChatGPT about, and I I talk bad about social media. I talk bad about YouTube. I talk bad about all these platforms. And part of it is because I am bad at controlling my own usage of it. So being able to demonize them within my own head allows me to not use them as much. But one of the goals and one of the things I want to be conscious to is not to increase anyone's shame about their addiction to their phone. Because at least for me, when it comes to addiction and the things I've quit, I find shame to be a useless emotion and a trash one, because all it does is it makes you feel like crap. It's, if you read Levels of Energy, it's one of the lowest forms of consciousness, and anger is actually above shame. If you can get someone from shame to anger, you have done them a huge favor, because from anger they can actually have the energy to start addressing what is causing the shame. But for most people, when they feel shame, they get caught in these negative shame spirals, these downward loops, and I've talked about them in my negative cycle video. But say your guilty pleasure is watching food videos, or I don't know, cave exploring videos on YouTube, or any of these other things, but then you feel shame about how much of your life you've wasted, how much TV, like, here's an example. I have a friend who watches these really, it's like The Bunny House or something, but it's like a reality TV show that talks about what it was like living in the Playboy Mansion. It's just really trashy TV. And say you have guilt or shame. Let's actually separate guilt and shame right now. So guilt, as I was talking to ChatGPT, I put it this way, and I actually really like it, is, let's see. Give me 2 seconds and I'll find the definition. So, here we go. I love this definition. So shame is feeling bad about oneself, whereas guilt is feeling bad about one's actions. When you feel bad about yourself, it's a lot worse than feeling guilty, because when you feel guilty, you kind of know where to change it. But when you feel shame, then that's internalized, which then makes it a lot worse, because you're more likely to then return to the behavior. Because it sounds weird, but for people who've had addictions, when you feel guilt about something, let's just start. Okay, you're doing the addiction because it releases dopamine. When you smoke cigarettes, it releases dopamine in the brain. And if you're feeling shameful because you're smoking and you know that you're killing yourself and that's a bad habit, that shame then causes you to feel extremely low dopamine and you feel horrible. Well, guess what the easiest way you found to feel good is? That's smoking. If you found an easier way to feel good than smoking, then you'd be doing that instead of smoking. But you go and you're going to smoke another cigarette. And then you're going to feel shame again. And it's these negative spirals, and literally, that's why I think shame is a useless emotion. Like, again, take that with a grain of sand, because it's coming from the energy level of talking about addiction and in the context of addiction. But in that context, I think shame is a useless emotion, and guilt would even be more preferable than shame, because a guilty behavior, you then move the negativity onto the behavior rather than onto you. So you might not lower your own energy level and feel the need to then consume more, because you're now demonizing, you're feeling guilty about, well, you have guilt about doing the behavior, so you might be less likely to do the behavior because it won't give you the same dopamine. Well, hopefully it won't, but maybe they're the same, maybe they're not. But I at least wanted to say guilt is, shame is at least in the context of addiction, a useless emotion. And then I give this to ChatGPT, and it talks more about how, and has some good points. It's like, I asked it for what is the counterpoint to shame being a useless emotion. It says a philosophical counter argument could be that accepting one's flaws and imperfections, including the occasional experience of shame, is part of being human. Striving for constant self-improvement and emotional control might lead to unrealistic expectations and additional stress. Being perfect is stupid. That's one thing I can tell you now. One thing I spent 2 years trying to be, and it only makes you feel worse because you're not meant to be perfect, man. I mean, you're perfectly human, and being human means you're never gonna be perfect, but you're perfectly who you're supposed to be. And keep that in mind, because I tried to be perfect. I tried to do the perfect diet. I tried to do the perfect everything. And what it would lead to is I'd mess up in one area of my life. And then I was like, well, you know what? I'm not perfect today, but tomorrow's a new chance to be perfect. So then I would allow myself to be imperfect in every other area of my life I was trying to improve. I would like eat junk food, like I don't know, say you skipped working out, or like you watch TV. Well, I watch TV, you know what else? I'm trying to not use drugs, so let's go smoke weed. Because I can smoke weed today, and tomorrow will be a fresh start. It'll be my fresh chance to be perfect. It's a horrible place to be. It leads to cycles of just like binging on all the things you don't want to be doing, then feeling shameful because you're not perfect, and then consuming lots of caffeine, because when you consume caffeine, you get the dopamine that you need to not act impulsively on these other areas of your life. But with that being said, it also talks about how some philosophies, such as existentialism, advocate for integration of all aspects of human experience, including negative emotions like shame. These emotions are part of the human condition and can provide depth and meaning to life. Yes, I do advocate allowing yourself to feel your emotions. When I felt the emotion of anxiety a couple of days ago, and I talked about this, I think in day 1 or day 2 of the detox, it went away. When you allow yourself to feel the emotion of being tired, it goes away. You might take a nap for like 10 minutes because you feel tired and you allow yourself to experience it, but 10 minutes later, you're not going to feel so tired anymore. When you allow yourself to experience anger without trying to keep pushing it down, the anger will come and you realize it cannot be sustained. It doesn't stay for long. It just, because it's a weaker emotion, it will come and then it will fade away. And that's also depending on the energy that you had before you had the anger. If you were empathetic and felt shame and then went up the scale to anger, I would recommend trying to maintain anger because you're increasing your energy level. But say you're a cheerful, happy person and something makes you feel really angry, allowing yourself to feel the feeling of anger is then going to let the feeling subside. So I talked to ChatGPT about this. I get the counter perspectives, and then it mentioned something I found interesting, which was here we go. Real world applications, challenges of changing perspective. Well, Jason emphasizes, and it says Jason because I gave it old voice memo file, so it's just who is speaking. Jason emphasizes the power of changing perspective to elevate emotional states. This process can be incredibly difficult for many individuals, especially those with deep-seated issues or mental health conditions. It might be unrealistic to expect everybody to be able to shift their emotional states through willpower and self-discipline alone. Yeah, it might be. It might be unrealistic to expect people to do this, but what other way is there? Like, if you base your success off of having someone else help you do something, you are setting yourself up to fail. And this might be my individualism and my uh, belief in being self-made. I'm not saying you can't get help from others, but if you cannot do something without the help of another person, you are setting yourself up to fail because people are not always there. Stuff comes up, people can die, life changes, and you need to be able to adapt to it. So if you take the responsibility onto yourself, then it's so much easier to actually raise your emotional states because you're the one who controls the action. And this is part of ditching the victim mindset of realizing you have the power to actually make the changes. So talks about how raising your emotional state. Yeah, it's difficult. What do you think I'm doing on this channel? Like this channel, if it was easy, this channel would be one video. It'd be like, I meditate, I'm now enlightened. No, it takes conscious effort. Like, that's the good thing I can say about it. Like, be happy that it's difficult. But guess what? Like with everything, if you practice it, you will be able to do it. And it might be difficult to practice it, but if you just keep practicing it, you keep the intention in your mind, and you keep working at it, like everything else in life, it will go. Like, you will become more conscious. You will elevate your state. There's no easy trick. All the easy tricks, guess what? They'll allow you to come up to a certain level of energy, but you will not be able to maintain that. Even a dying person told that cigarettes are killing them they might quit for a week, they might quit for 2 weeks, but eventually 99% of them will go back to smoking. Yes, I made up that number of 99%, but I've seen people being told that their diet, their situation in life is killing them, and they have like this brief motivation to change, but they can't sustain that. They can't make it last. So what winds up happening is they fall back into their old habits. They fall back into the derp state. They fall back into unconscious living, which is why I emphasize conscious living as the key to changing all other areas of your life. But I asked ChatGPT, give me some ways a person can elevate their state. And here they are, and I might turn this into a tier video just because those do well in view count, at least the ones I've seen do. I do want to expose more people to it because it's not the most fun thing in the world trying to help people and having no people that want to be helped. It feels good to help people, and it feels good when people see stuff and then make changes based off of what you say. But physical activity to increase endorphins. I did this with cold plunges. If you go back to the start of this channel, you might find some weird spearfishing videos, but other ones are, and there's a lot of jiu-jitsu videos, but other videos are talking about my ice baths. I have a whole playlist of it, and I talk about how I was depressed and how I couldn't maintain my energy level. And what I would do is I would take these ice baths, and when I took the ice baths, I would have realizations. I'd have ideas of like, okay, what if I write down everything that I'm grateful for? So I'd take the ice bath and I'd bring my energy up to here and I'd write down the things I was grateful for. I'd use ChatGPT to help me. And like, I'm grateful that college gave me the skills to teach myself because my teachers weren't always that good. And it might sound like a backhanded compliment. It slightly is, but it really gave me the ability to teach myself and the confidence that I know there's nothing I can't teach myself if I just sit down and do it. Like I've learned engineering and I didn't really show up to classes, and I kind of just taught myself the whole thing. And I somehow finished with a stupid high GPA, but that's mostly because I worked too hard and I wasn't enjoying life back then. At least not as much. With that being said, another way to do it is through balance of diet and hydration. Optimal brain function is crucial. Like, through the coaching, I've met many people who one of our base protocols is, guess what? I'm going to put you on drinking. I'm going to try to get you to drink a gallon of water a day. Take proper salt. Take proper magnesium. You know how many small issues, and even large issues, that fixes within people? Like, improper electrolyte balance is huge. Modern diets, they're like, salt is bad. No, you need salt. A nerve signal is an electrical signal. Electricity cannot travel through water unless there are electrolytes in it. Like, this just stuff that's basic that they don't teach you, but you need a certain amount of salt. Eating too much salt is bad if you never sweat it out. But if you can sweat and you go to the sauna, you work out, eating some salt, your body will get rid of the extra in your pee and your sweat. And like, you need to have proper electrolytes. You need to go get a blood test to see what your electrolytes are. Also, hydration is huge. When I was first quitting nicotine, when I was smoking, I assumed that every headache I got was due to a lack of nicotine. So I'd go out and I'd smoke. When I was quitting, I had to start associating, well, this type of headache kind of feels like dehydration. This kind of headache is like low electrolytes. If you feel low energy around 2 p.m. every day and you had a decent night's sleep the night before, I would eat like a salt pill, because for me, that's what does it. And again, not a doctor. Talk to your own entertainment purposes. Like, I don't know, trying to stay on YouTube and not get kicked off for having someone take way too much salt and dying. I do have a video talking about how I almost killed myself with potassium by accident because I didn't properly read the dosages. And it can be a horrible experience. But increasing your salt, putting a pinch of salt in water is not always... There's very little bad side to it, but again, talk to your doctor. Basic sleep hygiene, putting your phone away, making a better sleep environment that's cool and dark. I mean, getting a sleep mask and earbuds, man. Some cheap shit. Some cheap stuff. Again, trying to be more conscious about the words I'm using. Expressive writing. Writing can do so much. It can allow you to think through your emotions. I was once extremely annoyed because I thought my teacher gypped me on my grade. So I wrote an email out to him. And in the email, I had to articulate where I thought I should have points. But you know what? When I actually looked at where he took points off and where I thought he shouldn't have taken points off, I realized, you know what? His grading was actually fair. I might not like the grade I got, but he graded it fairly. And that's something you can get if you work through your emotions. A gratitude journal. Again, that's literally how, when you're depressed, when you're at these low energy states, you can't maintain, let's just make sure I'm not too out of focus. There we go. You can't maintain these energies, and you might only have negative thoughts going through your head. But a gratitude journal, even if you have to read it, while you're reading it, you're having some positive thoughts going through your head. And guess what? Like anything else in life, the more positive thoughts you have, the more other thoughts get triggered. The more ideas I think about to make into YouTube videos, the more ideas I get. And it's this cycle of, now I have pages on pages of Google Docs with ideas for YouTube videos. And I have to go through and be like, well, what do I want my content to be about? What do I think is going to help people the most versus view count? But that's a conversation for later. Small achievements and celebrating them. This is actually really good. I mean, when you mess up, when I was trying to be perfect, I would sometimes mess up, and my small achievement for that day, and I'd go to bed extremely happy, would be, I didn't let everything else go to crap. I didn't let everything else fall apart. I realized I messed up, but I got back on track. And that realization alone was huge. Personal projects and hobbies. Join a jiu-jitsu gym. It's amazing. You'll build up. I mean, you have to go for the first 3 months or until someone else joins the gym. But the moment you start actually doing a little bit better and realizing that you can choke another person out, it does wonders for your self-confidence. And it's also just a tight group of people. I mean, you're all there. It's really hard work, but you're putting it in. It's a great community of people to be around. Walks in nature. I mean, this is what I talk about when I say change your environment. If you cannot become greater than your emotions, if you cannot become greater than your environment, then change your emotions and change your environment. Go to a different environment so you have different emotions. Listen to music so that you can change your emotions, because music can allow you to do that. If you're not greater than your emotions yet, then find a tool like music, like a movie that may be super positive or a motivational video, and use that to change your emotions. And then once you're at that higher emotional state, you can then better evaluate how to maintain it more. When I meditate and I become more enlightened, and I become more aware, more present, I then have the better cognitive ability, not grammar, but better cognitive ability to evaluate and try to maintain that state more. So change your environment. Go to a library. That's a higher energy level state. Go out into nature. That's higher energy level. Watch the sunset. Higher energy. Like, you can do all these things. You can change your environment. You can look at levels of energy and see what things you can do. Like, you don't always have to. A lot of the time, addressing an issue at the problem it arises on is not the actual way to solve it. If you have habits that are, say, due to being less conscious, being at a lower state, being at lower energy, you don't have to address those habits directly. You can actually just focus on raising your energy, raising your consciousness, and with the higher consciousness, with the higher energy levels, some of those habits just go away. And that it might be, you might take a lot of your energy to address, say, one negative habit of like overeating or something. And if you put the same energy into just becoming more conscious, then not only would you stop overeating, but you might also have the energy to go to the gym. You might have the energy to think more positively, to not argue with your family so much and realize kind of how arguments form and be able to step back from that. And again, it talks about this below. Number 8 on the list is music. You can use music to change your energy and raise it up. You don't listen to depressing stuff, but you can listen to higher energy music. You can listen to, I know a lot of people don't like it, but you can listen to classical music, which is at a higher energy level. It might be at too high of an energy level for you to appreciate it at your current state. So you might have to go to a type of music that is slightly above the type of music you normally listen to, but you can kind of feel that out. Like, you'll listen to a song and notice, do I feel happier or sadder than when I first started? Affirmations, little things that you tell yourself. When I was quitting nicotine, I'd say I'm happy to be free. And every time I had a thought of nicotine, I would then think I'm happy to be free. And eventually, I would unconsciously do it. So, because I was training my unconscious to have this thought, and there are good things about unconscious. And if you can be conscious enough to train your unconscious, then you can have these good habits. But I would sometimes, before I even finish the thought of like, I'm happy to be free. Like, I just cut it off and say, I'm happy to be free. Or I'm glad that I went to college. Like, or another good one is try to notice something new in your environment. Getting yourself out of your head and into your environment and into the present moment for many, many people will raise your energy up. You'll be at a higher state of consciousness. Cognitive I don't even know what that. Restructuring. Activity. Just reframing thoughts. Yoga and Tai Chi. I'm not the biggest fan of yoga and Tai Chi. I like functional movement, and stretching that way. And that might be crazy, and you can let me know in the comments, but I have found a correlation between people at my gym who start doing yoga and who wind up getting injured more. And it is start doing yoga versus people who try to do yoga to rehab. I know there's people who initially do yoga and think that yoga will help their jiu-jitsu. They like stretch their limbs out more than they should be. They stretch their body out more than they should be. And now in its overstretched state, it just gets injured. That's why I recommend functional movement. Pavel something. Google Pavel and kettlebells, and some dude will pop up. And he has a book, The Quick and the Dead and stuff. But he has great things about functional movement and how to stay healthy and have good joints. And I think that brings us to the end of my realizations. Much longer video than I actually thought it was going to be, but we got caught off on some stories. Again, if you've made it this far, consider subscribing and giving this video a like. Also, commenting what was your favorite part. What do you think about the direction of the channel? Really, just commenting helps show engagement, which helps the channel out. So I'll catch you for day 4.